I was talking with someone this morning who happened to run into early, and they are telling me that they have been a lifelong Democrat, but were embarrassed last night by the Democrat Party's, what you might call, symbolism during the State of the Union address delivered by President Donald Trump. In fact, the individual said to me, "I'm also a Christian, and when I saw all of those women dressed in white, I thought it looked satanic." You weren't alone. The other part of this, liberals, the Twitter universe was just smoking last night after Mr. Trump. He acknowledged the widow of a dead Navy SEAL who happened to be in the gallery, and there was a long ovation, and liberals were screaming, "Well, you got her husband killed. You're just taking advantage of her." Well, the mission was planned by President Obama. It took place just as Mr. Trump assumed the office of the presidency. And sometimes people do get killed on these missions. It's part of the job, and these people know it going in. During that ovation, Debbie Wasserman-Scultz and the Muslim Keith Ellison sat on their hands and stared straight ahead. They never applauded this woman whose husband gave the last full measure of devotion for this country. I knew that last night was not going to go well for Democrats while I was watching Neil Cavuto's program yesterday afternoon on the Fox News channel, when Richard Trumka was a guest. Now, I don't know a lot about Richard Trumka other than he runs the AFL-CIO. My family history, my dad was heavily involved in the labor organizations back in the 1960s and would often be jetting off to Washington for conferences and meeting with George Meany, who then at the time was the leader of that amalgamation of trade unions. Mr. Trumka does not have a history of backing Republicans. The only big union I ever remember getting behind a Republican, the Teamsters were behind Richard Nixon. That was because Jimmy Hoffa didn't like the Kennedy family, and Mr. Nixon, of course, was the great, what you might call, foil of the Kennedys. So that was for political reasons. It wasn't necessarily for union reasons. Mr. Trumka appeared yesterday on the program with Neil Cavuto, and he said something I thought was fascinating, that Donald Trump is definitely looking out for working people in this country. Now, Democrats have been trying to play this identity politics thing, more worried about who gets to use the girls' potty or the boys' potty or what clothes you're wearing, even if you're a confused boy, if you're wearing girls' clothes and vice versa. And they've been trying to focus on all of this and divide Americans up, and apparently it is boomeranging and it is becoming a disaster for them. Not that I'm upset by that. Keep it up. Keep doing it. This morning, I got an email from an old acquaintance. He teaches journalism at Quinnipiac University. That's the home of a large poll. You may be familiar with the name for that reason. I wouldn't call him a flaming liberal, but for most of his life he was fairly liberal, and then his brother joked about 10 years ago he started to drift more rightward. But my friend's about 70 years old. He's never going to be what I would call a dyed-in-the-wool conservative. On the other hand, he sent me a link. He's Jewish, and he's very upset because he says Keith Ellison's supporters, they're angry that he did not become Democrat national chairman. They're now blaming Jews for his loss. I'm telling you, they can keep this up all they want, but they're going to be driving more and more regular Americans away from their political party or what's left of their political party. Also on Cavuto yesterday, I was watching the program, I shall put it this way, diligently yesterday afternoon, and a congressman from Chicago was a guest. His name is Luis Fernando Gutierrez. And he's a Democrat, if you didn't already know that. He's a Democrat, and he has been one of the loudest voices for illegal immigrants in this country, although he calls them undocumented. That's an Orwellian sleight of language. That's pretty much how you describe it if you're trying to avoid the obvious, and that is people come here illegally. However, he dropped a hint. He might be willing to work with Donald Trump, and they may actually find some common ground on this issue, although he can't come right out and say it because he might lose his liberal card they'll take his privileges away from him.
People who come here to do harm, for me, they're not immigrants. You know what they are? They're foreigners. And I don't want them here in this country either. But I'm talking about
so you already
those
have
that have
common
come
ground with
to
the president. There you go. You have common ground with the president.
those
on
who
one
have
thing.
come
So
to
don't
sweat.
sit on your hands
Yes,
and be
but
quiet. You have an opportunity to work with him.
But it's not common ground. When we have dreamers that are being threatened,
Again, this whole dreamer thing and this notion that people are just being rounded up and stuck into cattle cars and sent away no matter how nice they are, it's not happening. The focus at the moment happens to be on people who have broken laws, serious laws. And that's what's going on. And he even acknowledges he doesn't want them here. Good. All right. If I'm Donald Trump, today I'm calling the congressman and I'm saying, you know what? I got an idea. Why don't you come over for lunch and see if you can't bridge the divide? Maybe it won't work, but at least he opened the door during that conversation yesterday. And you may as well have a sit down with him. And at some point, maybe there's going to be a little bit of agreement, which is better than no agreement. Also, talking about that very issue, because when Mr. Trump last night phrased it, and he pointed out, this is about the safety of the American people. And he made it clear, I'm not the president of the world. I was elected to be president of the United States. That's my main role. He made it clear that a lot of the people who are fighting him on this, they don't care about the victims of crime in this country. That's why he pointed out the father who lost his teenage son, who happened to be sitting in the gallery as well. That man was up early this morning. I was too, but he was up early this morning appearing on Fox News. I don't think he had any sleep. But this is the point. The Democrats are ignoring the American people who feel that they're being preyed upon by some of the folks, some being the operative word, some of the folks who are coming here. CBS News had a focus group on following the president's speech last night, and it was being run by the pollster Frank Luntz. There was a woman in the audience from Guatemala originally, and she was claiming, and this is somebody who came here for a job and to work, and because she likes the liberties she can get in this country. She claims, though, that many of her fellow immigrants are simply coming here for a free lunch, and she's not happy about that. There was a bearded liberal. He looked like a college professor. They have the goatee. They got to have the trim beard so they can look more and more like Burl Ives. It's part of the liberal left uniform when they're working on these college campuses. He tried to argue with her. Man, did she ever put that liberal in his place.
You're Latina, right?
Yes.
Did you vote for him?
Yes.
Are you first generation here?
Yes.
Where were you born?
Guatemala.
And yet you support him.
Yes.
Tell me why.
For jobs. I came here because I wanted an opportunity, not a hangout. And the problem with here is that, anybody comes in, they have a kid, and they start collecting money. That's every single person I know, that's what they do.
But there are a lot of other people
Yes,
who
there
are
is a
in
lot of,
school
I
or
don't
in
have
the
any
military.
kids, and I didn't collect. I haven't collected.
Right.
I don't know.
And neither have these people. They're working.
But the majority is.
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true.
Well, go to school and ask who has the benefits.
She went on to point out that her children go to school with the children of a lot of these people here who are just welfare chiselers. But the white liberal, he kept saying, I refuse to believe that. Well, he doesn't live in her neighborhood. He lives behind some gate somewhere in a $500,000 home. He has no idea. And yet, here you go. They claim Trump is the racist bigot, and this guy's telling this woman, I know better than you. And you, let me educate you, you stupid little Latina woman. That's what we're getting out of the American left. It's 8:15. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Some of the things we'll be talking about this morning, we have a guest coming up from Triff Family Medicine in 15 minutes. We'll spend a half hour on some medical issues this morning. Also, following the 9 o'clock news, we're going to spend some time with Russell Smith from Western Visions, Inc., which I've been telling you about the last couple of weeks. They're doing high-end renovations here in the Magic Valley, as well as, 2 states now, Idaho and Montana. And he's bringing along one of his clients as well, who's having a private lodge completed very, very, very soon, in fact. And we'll talk a little bit with them about the work. And a lot of people out there love historical buildings. This is an opportunity for you to hear from someone who actually does that fine craftsmanship. And then in the last half hour of the program today, we're going to be delving into some issues that are surrounding us here in the state of Idaho, including the Article 5 convention. There will be a discussion in the state Senate today in Boise, and there's actually going to be a demonstration going on at the Capitol against that. So those things are on the way a little bit later in the program. But still, top story today being the president's address and some of the reaction to it last night. How about this from Van Jones? Van Jones is an admitted Marxist. He was appearing on CNN following the president's speech last night. Wow, surprises just keep rolling in the last couple of days.
He became president of the United States in that moment, period. There are a lot of people who have a lot of reason to be frustrated with him, to be fearful of him. But that was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period. And he did something extraordinary. And for people who have been hoping that he would become unifying, hoping that he might find some way to become presidential, they should be happy with that moment.
Oops, I guess he'll lose his liberal card too. Chris Wallace from Fox News, who's not necessarily a big Donald Trump fan, says it might be the best speech by a president to a joint session of Congress that Wallace has ever witnessed. Just telling you that, in case you didn't pick up on it. 31 right now. We're coming up on 8:18. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Well, some of the people in the audience, Lindsey Graham for one, their jealousy of what Trump has accomplished is so overwhelmingly obvious by looking at their faces. I tell you what, that Lindsey Graham's face, it's just so, these people are so self-absorbed that they think they are the center of everybody, their universe for sure, but ours too. And when it doesn't happen, and they aren't getting the attention they need so desperately, they become unhinged, no doubt about it. Pelosi, she didn't know whether or not to stand up, sit down, shut up, leave. She didn't know what she was going to do. These people are mentally ill to a point.
Oh, Graham said yesterday that he would not support the president's budget because it cuts foreign aid. Graham, once again, is one of these people who believes we should keep sending money to Pakistan, Myanmar, and Egypt, where everybody hates us, at the expense of our own children and our own future.
Well, one more quick point and I'll hang up. When Trump said for NATO that the people are starting to pay their fair share and the money is rolling in, see, this is the kind of thing, little things like that, and the people out in the audience say, oh, my word, this really is working. He really is serious. This is really going to be ran like a business. We all have to do what we got to do, just like the lady from Guatemala. Life is life, and we have to endure it and figure out a way to make it happen. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Pelosi, some writer said this morning that Pelosi had the look on her face of having looked into the Ark of the Covenant. I think that's a reference to, remember the Nazis in one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yeah, that was it. That was the movie, Indiana Jones movie, when they ended up melting and turning to dust. It's 8:20, 30 right now. More on this subject ahead. And in fact, more on this subject very quickly ahead. Well, we've migrated most of a lot of our commercial content is now being read live on the air instead of taped, including a message from my good friend, Dr. Christine Pickup from Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. And I've got to tell you, people are asking me a lot about these businesses that advertise with us and my endorsements. And the reason I endorse Mount Harrison Audiology, and there are a lot of choices for hearing healthcare out there, but it's because of Dr. Pickup's experience. She's a certified audiologist with 17 years in the working with the hearing impaired of all ages. Now, that doesn't mean just people like me who are getting older and, we're headed for that appointment with the hearing aids, but she works with people who have hearing loss, even among the very young. True diagnostic testing will help you to know what causes your hearing loss and will lead to the best treatment option available. Trust your hearing to a certified audiologist. Telephone Mount Harrison Audiology for your appointment today. The number is 208-312-0957. That's 312-0957. As I mentioned, we expect Dr. Tripp or one of his associates in a few minutes from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls, talking about doctors and the like. Tripp Family Medicine located on Fillmore Street and still looking for new patients. And they can often see you on the very same day if you call in the morning with a medical issue that you need to have addressed. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. Some of the reaction from the speech last night, you may recall, just about a couple of weeks before the election happened in October, U.S. Senator Mike Crapo from here in Idaho suggested that Trump should withdraw from the race and let Mike Pence then. Everyone assumed that the audio tape of Donald Trump joking with Billy Bush about groping women was going to sink Trump's chances of winning the election. So all of the Republicans who were panicking about that, believing that the media had a huge influence on the voters, they were all licking a finger, putting it up in the air and seeing which way the wind was blowing. I criticized Mike Crapo for that at the time. I thought it was a rush to judgment. He later backed off of that. And remember, I have a lot of friends here in Idaho and a lot of people listen to this show who are not big fans of Mike Crapo. However, he's got a 98% rating from the American Conservative Union. There's only, I believe, 3 other members of the U.S. Senate who have 100. And these are done in increments of 2, so there's no 99. So he's essentially second, even though some people may be tied at 100%. So he's like number 2. So I don't have a huge beef with him on most issues like some of our callers do or some of my friends here in Twin Falls who give me an earful about him. He himself said last night he's looking very much forward to helping Mr. Trump get his agenda through Congress.
He asked for limited government, a government and a system in which individual liberties are protected and preserved, a free market economy, protection of our Constitution as it was written, and a strong national defense. And of course, repealing Obamacare and replacing it with a health care system that works. I look forward to working with President Trump and with all of my colleagues in the Senate and in the House to achieve this vision.
There you go. So he's not on the Lindsey Graham bandwagon. Graham and McCain and that crowd, they just don't like Donald Trump because Donald Trump has made them. And he made Graham look so ridiculous during the primary season, and John McCain. All I can say about him, when he went over to Europe last week and badmouthed the president in front of a conference there, Benedict Arnold was a great American hero immediately following the Battle of Saratoga and had been badly wounded in that battle. John McCain was once a great American hero after he was shot down, badly wounded, and held prisoner in North Vietnam. Benedict Arnold today is synonymous with treason. There's a lesson in there for John McCain. And I remember reading years ago a columnist at Parade Magazine. Parade Magazine isn't necessarily, it's not one of those highfalutin things you read because you're trying to better educate yourself. It's one of those fun things you read on a Sunday. And a writer was answering a question in one of the Q&A columns about McCain, and he said, McCain is really a Democrat. I agree with that. And speaking of liberals, A Tale of Two Parties is a headline today by Eric Erickson at theresurgent.com. And he mentioned Steve Beshear, the former governor of Kentucky, who gave the response to the president's address. And he said he did a pretty good job. Now, I saw Beshear and I thought, is this The Walking Dead? I mean, they're bringing corpses out and animating them so they can speak on television. That's what it looked like to me. But Beshear used to be what you call a blue dog Democrat. In other words, he was not a flaming liberal. And according to this writer, he speaks for a Democratic Party that no longer exists. It died when Democrats, to advance their left-wing agenda, threw the congressional blue dogs under the bus. The Democrats on Capitol Hill could not bring themselves to applaud the idea of putting America first, keeping Americans safe from crime, or even rebuilding the military. And again, it looked awful. I don't think that they've come to grips yet. When even Rachel Maddow was praising President Trump last night on TV, and we mentioned a minute ago Van Jones praising him, and you've got a Latino woman who came here from Guatemala praising him, and even Luis Gutierrez saying, you know what, there might be some common ground to work with him. the rest of the Democrat Party is completely adrift. I mean, and you know what? All the better, because the fact of the matter is, when I heard the figure the other night that 85% of all elected officials in the state of Idaho, now that's town, city, county, and state government, and our congressional delegation as well, 85%, 84.5 to be completely accurate, are Republicans. That's a wave that is sweeping the country. And if it eliminates these cross-dressers using little girls' potties in the long run, then that's a good thing. That's good for America. All we saw last night was just more whining from these godless, devious SOBs. That's all they are. And we've got to recognize that. And I think the American people, and there was a big audience because Trump draws a crowd when he's on television and radio. There was a big audience, and they got to hear and they got to see the petulance of the Democrat Party. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. It's 8:27 and it's 33. Felt pretty good to walk out of the house this morning and not actually have to scrape the windshield or brush snow off the car, which was a good thing. I needed the extra time because I had to stop at an overnight grocery to buy myself some Pepto. Today is for a great many of us, Lent begins today, and that means a lot of us are going to be making some sacrifices, and we're limited with what we can eat during the course of a day. And I bring that up because I had some spicy food last night for dinner that I'll probably be skipping otherwise. The problem was I didn't have any tummy medicine. And I had to go stop and buy something on the way into work today because it kept me up for a good part of the night. On the good side of that, the fact that I'm going on the Roman Catholic diet plan will help me along with the total body transformation system I've also been on. And just a quick note on that. I am down nearly 70 pounds. I weighed in yesterday. I'm now down nearly 70 pounds over 4 months. Woohoo! For those of you out there who've been asking me questions about this, I'm telling you right now, it's nothing you're going to have to worry about when it comes to expenses because the meal replacement plan runs about the same as the groceries you'd otherwise be buying. This is a diet that is proven to burn 6 times more fat and you'll lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. And the meal replacement plan is generally healthier than a lot of the meals that you've been eating. You also get to have a healthy amount of calories. And I wanted to point out, too, that the average participant, now some people will lose more than this, but the average participant will drop 22 pounds and lose 4 inches off his or her waist in just 60 days. Clinical results have been published in prestigious scientific journals all over the world and presented at numerous scientific meetings. We also wanted to mention that the ingredients have been validated. They result in appetite control, increased metabolic fat burning, and a healthy natural boost of energy, backed up with an unconditional money-back guarantee. And if you'd like to know more, give my friend, marketing executive Don Chandler a telephone call right here in Twin Falls. Don's also a customer, lost in excess of 50 pounds himself. The telephone number for Don, 208-731-3560. 208-731-3560. And remember, as I said, I'm down almost 70 pounds now. And with my Lenten promises tossed in as well in a couple of weeks, I should really be on the way. In the meantime, better health with Tripp Family Medicine coming up shortly on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.